Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, glancing at the clock on the garage wall. It was nearly 6 in the evening, and he still had 2 more cars to finish before he could pick up his 8-year-old daughter Emma from his neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez's house. Being a single dad wasn't easy, especially when you owned a small auto repair shop that barely made enough to cover the bills. The sound of a motorcycle sputtering and dying outside caught his attention. Through the open garage door, he saw a woman in designer jeans and a leather jacket pushing a sleek red Ducati toward his shop. Her long, dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and even from a distance, Marcus could tell she looked frustrated and out of place in his modest neighborhood. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't quite place. "Are you still open? My bike just died on me." Marcus set down his wrench and walked toward her. "Yeah, I'm still here. What seems to be the problem?" The woman, who appeared to be in her early 30s, pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I honestly have no idea. It was running fine, and then it just started making this weird noise and stopped. I'm not really mechanical at all." He noticed her expensive watch and the quality of her leather jacket, but what struck him most was how genuine her smile seemed despite her obvious frustration. "Let me take a look. I'm Marcus, by the way." "Sophia," she replied, extending her hand. Her grip was firm and confident. "And I really appreciate this. I was supposed to meet some friends for dinner, but I guess that's not happening now." Marcus wheeled the Ducati into his garage, admiring the machine despite himself. It was a beautiful bike, probably worth more than he made in 6 months. "This is a nice ride. How long have you had her?" "About a year," Sophia said, watching him as he began his inspection. "It was kind of an impulse purchase. I saw it at the dealership and fell in love with the color." As Marcus examined the engine, he noticed Sophia looking around his cluttered garage with curious eyes rather than judgment. Most of his wealthy customers seemed uncomfortable in his working-class shop, but she appeared genuinely interested in everything around her. "You've got quite a setup here," she commented, pointing to a vintage Mustang in the corner. "Is that a 67? Marcus looked up, surprised. "You know cars?" Sophia laughed, a warm sound that filled the garage. "Not really, but my dad was obsessed with classic cars. He had a 67 Mustang when I was growing up. Same color as that one." Something in her voice when she mentioned her father made Marcus glance at her again. There was a wistfulness there, a sadness that seemed at odds with her polished appearance. "Found your problem," Marcus announced, pointing to a loose connection. "Just a wire that worked itself free. Happens sometimes with the vibration. Give me 5 minutes and you'll be back on the road." "Really? That's it?" Sophia moved closer to see what he was doing, and Marcus caught a hint of expensive perfume mixed with the leather of her jacket. "Sometimes the simplest problems cause the biggest headaches," he said, making the repair. "There you go, try starting her up." The Ducati roared to life on the first try, purring like a contented cat. Sophia's face lit up with genuine delight, and Marcus found himself smiling at her reaction. "You're a lifesaver," she said over the engine noise before turning it off. "What do I owe you?" $20 should cover it," Marcus said, wiping his hands again. Sophia pulled out her wallet, and Marcus caught a glimpse of several credit cards and what looked like a substantial amount of cash. She handed him a $50 bill. "Keep the change. You saved my evening." "Ma'am, I can't take this much for such a simple fix," Marcus protested, trying to hand back the extra money. "Please," Sophia said, her hand touching his briefly as she pushed the money back toward him. "You dropped everything to help a stranger. That's worth more than $30 to me." Before Marcus could argue further, his phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez reminding him about Emma. He glanced at the message and sighed. "Everything okay?" Sophia asked, noticing his expression. "Yeah, just need to pick up my daughter. Single dad duties," he said with a self-conscious laugh. Something flickered across Sophia's face, surprise maybe, or interest. "How old is she?" 8 going on 18, Marcus replied, his voice softening as it always did when he talked about Emma. "She's the boss around here, even if she doesn't know it yet." "She's lucky to have a dad who cares so much," Sophia said, quietly. There was something in her tone that made Marcus look at her more closely, but before he could respond, she was already putting on her helmet. "Thank you again, Marcus," she said, starting the bike. "Maybe I'll see you around." As she rode away, disappearing into the evening traffic, Marcus realized he was still holding the $50 bill. He also realized that for the first time in months he'd actually enjoyed talking to someone who wasn't 8 years old, or asking him to explain why their car was making a strange noise. He locked up the garage and headed to pick up Emma, Sophia's warm laugh still echoing in his mind. He had no idea that the woman he'd just helped owned a tech company worth billions, or that she'd been driving through working-class neighborhoods, specifically to escape the suffocating world of wealth and privilege that surrounded her every day. All he knew was that she'd seemed different from his usual customers, and something about her genuine gratitude had made his long day feel a little brighter. Little did Marcus know that Sophia was thinking about him too, and that their chance encounter would soon change both of their lives in ways neither could have imagined. 3 days later, Sophia found herself driving through the same neighborhood again, though she couldn't quite admit to herself why. She'd told her assistant she was scouting locations for a new community outreach program, but the truth was, she couldn't stop thinking about the mechanic with the kind eyes and calloused hands who had fixed her bike without trying to overcharge her or impress her. In her world of board meetings and charity galas, everyone wanted something from her. As the CEO of Technova Solutions, a company she'd built from the ground up after dropping out of Stanford, Sophia was used to people being either intimidated by her success or trying to get close to her money. But Marcus had simply treated her like any other customer who needed help. She slowed down as she approached his garage, telling herself she was just being cautious about the traffic. Through the open bay doors, she could see Marcus working under the hood of an old sedan, his concentration complete. A small girl with pigtails sat on a nearby stool, swinging her legs and chattering away while coloring in a book. Without fully deciding to, Sophia pulled over and parked across the street. She watched as Marcus straightened up, said something that made the little girl giggle, and then ruffled her hair affectionately. The scene was so natural, so unguarded, that Sophia felt something tighten in her chest. She'd grown up with nannies and boarding schools while her father built his empire, and seeing this easy intimacy between Marcus and his daughter stirred something she'd thought she'd made peace with long ago. The little girl looked up and spotted Sophia sitting on her motorcycle across the street. She waved enthusiastically, causing Marcus to turn and see her too. Even from a distance, Sophia could see his face light up with recognition. He said something to his daughter, who immediately jumped off her stool and skipped toward the street, with Marcus following close behind. "Sophia!" the little girl called out as they approached. "Daddy said you have the prettiest motorcycle he's ever worked on. I'm Emma." Sophia removed her helmet, smiling at the child's directness. "Hi, Emma. Your dad did a great job fixing it. Is this your after-school hangout spot?" "Uh-huh." Emma nodded vigorously. "I do my homework here, and Daddy lets me help sometimes. Well, mostly I just hand him tools, but he says I'm a good helper." Marcus caught up to them, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "Emma, let the lady breathe," he said with gentle humor. "Sophia, right? Everything still running okay?" "Perfect," Sophia replied, surprised by how genuinely happy she felt to see them both. "Actually, I was wondering if you might look at something else. My friend has this vintage Porsche that's been giving her trouble, and the dealership wants to charge her a fortune just to diagnose the problem." It wasn't entirely true. Sophia didn't have many close friends, and the Porsche was actually hers, sitting in her climate-controlled garage at home. But something about being here, being treated normally, made her want to extend the connection. "I could take a look," Marcus said, "though I should warn you I'm probably not as fancy as the dealership mechanics your friend is used to." "Trust me, fancy isn't always better," Sophia said, meaning it. She's been burned by expensive mechanics before who were more interested in her wallet than actually fixing the problem. Emma tugged on her father's coveralls. "Daddy, ask her if she wants to stay for pizza. Mrs. Rodriguez is making extra." Marcus looked embarrassed. "Emma, I'm sure Sophia has plans." "Actually," Sophia interrupted, surprising herself, "pizza sounds amazing, but only if it's not too much trouble." The truth was, She had a networking dinner scheduled with potential investors that evening, the kind of event where everyone would spend 2 hours talking about quarterly projections, while eating tiny portions of food that cost more than Marcus probably spent on groceries in a week. The thought of staying here instead, eating pizza with a single dad and his talkative daughter, seemed infinitely more appealing. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked, searching her face. "It's not fancy or anything. Mrs. Rodriguez makes pizza in her regular oven, not some wood-fired thing." "Regular oven pizza is the best kind," Sophia said firmly. "My grandmother used to make it that way when I was Emma's age." As they walked toward the small apartment building next to the garage, Emma chattering excitedly about her school day, Sophia realized she'd just lied again. Her grandmother had employed a chef who made elaborate Italian meals, not simple homemade pizza. But something about this place, these people, made her want to be someone different. Someone normal. Mrs. Rodriguez turned out to be a warm woman in her 60s who welcomed Sophia into her small, cheerful kitchen as if she'd known her for years. The apartment smelled like garlic and basil, and every surface was covered with family photos and children's artwork that Emma had apparently contributed over the years. "So you're the motorcycle lady," Mrs. Rodriguez said with a knowing smile. "Marcus mentioned you. Very pretty bike," he said. "Thank you," Sophia replied, accepting a glass of homemade lemonade. "Marcus is a great mechanic. Fixed my problem in 5 minutes. He's good with his hands," Mrs. Rodriguez agreed, beginning to roll out pizza dough. "Always has been, even as a boy. His mama used to say he could fix anything except a broken heart." Sophia caught the meaningful look Mrs. Rodriguez gave Marcus, who had suddenly become very interested in helping Emma wash her hands at the sink. There was clearly a story there, but Sophia didn't feel like she had the right to ask. Instead, she found herself genuinely enjoying the simple pleasure of helping make dinner. She chopped vegetables while Emma told her about her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who apparently had the best stickers in the whole school. Marcus shared stories about his more challenging customers, including a woman who insisted her car was making a whirring, clicking, bonking sound that turned out to be her coffee mug rattling in the cup holder. As they sat around Mrs. Rodriguez's small dining table sharing the homemade pizza, Sophia realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed so much. Emma was a natural entertainer, full of observations about the world that were both innocent and surprisingly insightful. Marcus was clearly devoted to his daughter, but he also had a quick wit and an easy laugh that made Sophia feel more relaxed than she had in months. "What do you do for work, Sophia?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked during a lull in Emma's story about her friend's lost tooth. Sophia hesitated for just a moment. "I work in technology," she said finally. "Software development mostly." It wasn't technically a lie, though it was a massive understatement. She did work in technology, even if she also happened to run a multi-billion-dollar company and regularly appeared on magazine covers as one of the most successful entrepreneurs under 40. "That sounds interesting," Marcus said. "I barely know how to work my smartphone half the time." "Technology is just tools," Sophia replied, "like what you do with cars. You figure out what's broken and find a way to fix it. The principles are the same." The evening passed quickly, and before Sophia knew it, Emma was yawning over her coloring book and Mrs. Rodriguez was insisting on sending her home with leftover pizza. As Marcus walked her to her motorcycle, Sophia felt reluctant to leave this warm circle of ordinary happiness. "Thank you," she said, putting on her helmet. "I can't remember the last time I enjoyed an evening this much." "Emma really liked you," Marcus said. "She doesn't usually warm up to people that quickly. You're good with kids." Sophia felt a pang of longing she'd trained herself not to acknowledge. "She's amazing. You're lucky to have each other." As she rode home through the city toward her empty penthouse apartment, Sophia found herself thinking about Emma's excited chatter and Marcus's patient responses, about Mrs. Rodriguez's warm kitchen and the easy laughter that had filled the small apartment. She thought about the board meeting she had the next morning and the investor dinner she'd skipped. And for the first time in years, she wondered if success was supposed to feel quite so lonely. 2 weeks passed before Sophia returned to Marcus's neighborhood, and this time she came with her vintage Porsche in tow on a flatbed truck. She'd actually developed a legitimate problem with the classic car, or rather, She'd finally decided to address the issues she'd been ignoring for months. The vintage 1973 Porsche 911 had belonged to her father, one of the few things of his she'd kept after his death 3 years ago. Marcus was under the hood of a pickup truck when the flatbed arrived, but he emerged wiping his hands when he heard the rumble of the truck's engine. His eyes widened when he saw the pristine silver Porsche being unloaded. "Now that's a beauty," he said, walking around the car with obvious appreciation. 1973? You know your Porsches, Sophia said, pleased by his reaction. "It was my father's. I've been meaning to get it running properly for ages, but the dealership quotes I've gotten are—" She trailed off, realizing she'd almost complained about money to someone who probably worried about paying rent. "Let me guess. They want to replace half the engine and charge you enough to buy a new car," Marcus said with a knowing grin. "I've heard that story before. Mind if I take a look?" As Marcus examined the Porsche, Sophia found herself watching his hands as he checked various components with obvious expertise. There was something attractive about competence, she realized, about watching someone who genuinely knew what they were doing. "Emma's not here today?" Sophia asked, noticing the absence of the chattering 8-year-old. "School field trip to the Science Museum," Marcus replied from under the hood. "She was excited about it for weeks, made me promise to take pictures of any really cool cars that came in so she could see them later." Sophia felt unexpectedly touched that she might be worth photographing for Emma's benefit. "She seems like a bright kid." "Too bright sometimes," Marcus said with paternal pride. "She asked me last week why birds don't get electrocuted when they sit on power lines. Spent an hour on Google trying to figure out how to explain electrical potential to an 8-year-old. What did you tell her?" "That birds are smarter than they look and know how to avoid danger," Marcus admitted sheepishly. "Not very scientific, but she bought it." Sophia laughed, remembering her own endless childhood questions that had driven her various caretakers to distraction. Her father had always been too busy to answer them himself, delegating her curiosity to tutors and nannies, who did their best but never quite satisfied her need to understand how everything worked. "Good news," Marcus announced, straightening up. "Nothing catastrophic wrong with her. You've got some worn belts, the carburetor needs adjustment, and there's a small oil leak, but it's all fixable. The previous mechanic who worked on this knew what they were doing. Everything's been maintained well." "That would be my father," Sophia said quietly. "He restored this car himself over about 3 years. It was his pride and joy." Marcus's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize. When did you lose him?" 3 years ago. Cancer." The words came out easier than they usually did. Sophia had learned to deflect sympathy quickly in business settings, but something about Marcus's genuine concern made her want to be honest. "He taught me to drive in this car, actually. Scared my mother to death letting a 16-year-old learn on a vintage Porsche, but he said if you're going to learn something, you might as well learn it right. Sounds like a smart man, and he'd be proud to know you're keeping his work alive." Marcus ran his hand along the car's flawless paint job. "This is going to be a pleasure to work on. How long can you leave her with me?" "As long as you need," Sophia said. "I'm not exactly pressed for transportation." As if to emphasize the point, her phone rang with the distinctive tone she'd assigned to her assistant. She glanced at the screen and saw 3 missed calls and several urgent text messages. "Go ahead and take it," Marcus said, beginning to gather his tools. "I'll start on the initial diagnosis." Sophia stepped outside to answer, and within seconds she was deep in crisis management mode. A key investor was having second thoughts about a major deal. Her head of development was feuding with the marketing team, and apparently there was some kind of social media situation that required her immediate attention. 20 minutes later, she ended the call to find Marcus sitting on an overturned crate, drinking a Coke and watching her with curious eyes. "Sorry about that," she said, tucking her phone away. "Work crisis." "Software development must be more intense than I thought," Marcus observed. "You sounded like you were running a whole company." Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. She'd been so focused on the phone call that she'd forgotten to maintain her carefully constructed cover story. "It's a small company, but everybody wears multiple hats," she said weakly. Marcus nodded, though something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Well, whatever you do, you're clearly good at it. And important to a lot of people from the sound of things. Before Sophia could respond, a familiar voice called out from the street. "Daddy, we're back." Emma came running across the street from where Mrs. Rodriguez was parking her car, a museum gift shop bag clutched in one hand and her backpack dragging behind her. She launched herself into Marcus's arms with the enthusiasm only 8-year-olds could muster. "Did you see any cool cars today?" she asked breathlessly, then spotted the Porsche. "Oh, wow. Is that Sophia's car? It's so pretty." "It was my father's car," Sophia explained, kneeling down to Emma's level. "Your dad is going to help me fix it up." "Can I help too?" Emma asked eagerly, looking between Sophia and Marcus. "I'm getting really good at organizing tools." "If it's okay with your dad and Sophia doesn't mind having an assistant," Marcus said. "I'd love the help," Sophia said, meaning it. There was something about Emma's uncomplicated enthusiasm that made her feel lighter. "What did you learn at the museum today?" Emma launched into an animated description of dinosaur skeletons and interactive science exhibits, complete with dramatic reenactments of how velociraptors hunted in packs. Sophia found herself genuinely engaged, asking follow-up questions that sent Emma into new spirals of excited explanation. "She's not usually this talkative with new people," Mrs. Rodriguez commented, having joined them in the garage. "You must have made quite an impression." "The feeling is mutual," Sophia replied, watching Emma demonstrate the proper stance for a T-Rex. As the afternoon wore on, Sophia found herself reluctant to leave. She helped Emma organize Marcus's tool collection by size and color, listened to more dinosaur facts than she'd ever thought she needed to know, and found herself thinking that this was exactly how she'd always imagined a normal childhood might feel. Her phone buzzed periodically with messages from her assistant, each one marked urgent, but for once Sophia found it easy to ignore them. Whatever crisis was unfolding at Technova would have to wait. She was learning about the difference between carnivores and herbivores, and somehow that felt more important than quarterly projections and investor relations. When she finally left that evening, promising Emma she'd come back to check on the Porsche's progress, Sophia realized she'd spent nearly 6 hours at the garage without thinking once about her company or her responsibilities. It was the longest she'd gone without checking her email in months, and instead of feeling guilty, she felt refreshed. As she rode her motorcycle home through the city traffic, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she was living two completely different lives. In one, she was a billionaire CEO responsible for thousands of employees and making decisions that affected the global technology landscape. In the other, she was just Sophia, a woman who helped 8-year-olds organize tools and learned about dinosaurs from someone who found the world endlessly fascinating. The problem was, she was starting to prefer the second life, and she had no idea what that meant for everything she'd worked so hard to build. The Porsche restoration became Sophia's excuse to visit Marcus's garage almost daily over the next 3 weeks. She told herself it was because she wanted to oversee the work on her father's car, but the truth was more complicated. For the first time in years, she had somewhere to go where people were genuinely happy to see her, not because of what she could do for them, but simply because she was there. Emma had appointed herself as Sophia's official tour guide to the neighborhood, showing her the best corner store for candy, the park where she played after school, and the library where story time happened every Saturday morning. Marcus seemed amused by his daughter's adoption of Sophia, but he also appeared to enjoy her visits, often timing his lunch breaks to coincide with her arrival. "You know," Marcus said one afternoon as they watched Emma carefully polish a chrome bumper, "I keep waiting for you to get bored with all this. Most people from your part of town don't usually hang around auto shops in the middle of the day." Sophia looked up from where she was sorting screws into small containers. "What makes you think I'm from a different part of town?" Marcus gave her a look that suggested he wasn't as naive as she'd hoped. "Well, let's see. Your motorcycle probably costs more than I make in a year. You carry yourself like someone who's used to being in charge, and every time your phone rings, you sound like you're making million-dollar decisions." Heat crept up Sophia's neck. "I told you I work in technology, Sophia," Marcus said gently. I may work with my hands for a living, but I'm not stupid. I don't know exactly what you do, but I'm pretty sure software development is like me saying I tinker with cars. It's technically true, but it's not the whole story. Sophia felt caught between her carefully maintained cover and an unexpected desire to be honest with someone who seemed to see through her anyway. Before she could respond, Emma looked up from her polishing with sudden excitement. "Oh, I forgot to tell you guys. Mrs. Patterson showed us this really cool video at school today about a lady who started a huge computer company. She was like super young and now she's on TV all the time talking about robots and stuff." Sophia's blood ran cold. She had done several high-profile interviews recently about artificial intelligence and the future of technology. If Emma had seen one of them... "What was her name?" Marcus asked, settling down next to his daughter with interest. Emma scrunched up her face in concentration. "Sophia something." "Sophia Ramos?" "No, that's not right. Sophia Reyes. That was it. She was really pretty, and she talked about how computers are going to help doctors save more people." Sophia felt relief wash over her. Sophia Reyes was the CEO of a competing tech company, someone she knew professionally, but who looked nothing like her. "That does sound interesting," she managed. "Yeah." And she said that when she was a little girl, she wanted to build robots that could help people. Mrs. Patterson said girls can be anything they want to be, even if some jobs seem like they're just for boys. Emma returned to her polishing with renewed vigor. "I think I might want to build robots too, or maybe fix cars like Daddy, or both." "You absolutely can do both," Sophia said, meaning it. "Some of the smartest people I know work with both computers and mechanical things." Marcus was watching her with that thoughtful expression again, and Sophia wondered what he was seeing that she wasn't revealing. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of a potential customer, a woman with a minivan who needed an oil change and was clearly in a hurry. "Go ahead," Sophia told Marcus. "Emma and I can keep working on the Porsche." As Marcus dealt with the customer, Sophia found herself alone with Emma for the first time. The little girl was full of questions about everything from why the Porsche had a different engine than modern cars, to whether Sophia had ever been married. "Daddy was married to my mommy before she went to heaven," Emma said matter-of-factly while examining a carburetor part. "Do you have a husband?" "No," Sophia replied, touched by the child's directness. "I never found the right person." "Daddy says the right person is worth waiting for," Emma said sagely. "He also says someday maybe he'll find someone who likes both him and me, but it has to be someone really special." Sophia felt something twist in her chest. "Your daddy is a smart man." "He's the best daddy in the world," Emma agreed. "He makes me pancakes that look like dinosaurs, and he reads me stories even when he's really tired from work. And when I have bad dreams, he lets me sleep in his bed until I feel better." The simple love in Emma's voice made Sophia's throat tight. She tried to imagine what her childhood would have been like with that kind of devoted attention. That sense of being someone's absolute priority. "You're really lucky to have each other," Sophia said softly. Emma nodded seriously, then brightened. "Maybe you could come to my school play next week. I'm playing a sunflower in our garden show. Daddy's coming, but it would be extra special if you came too." Before Sophia could answer, Marcus returned from dealing with the minivan. "What are you two conspiring about over here?" "I invited Sophia to my play," Emma announced. "She can sit with you and Mrs. Rodriguez and see me be the tallest sunflower in the whole garden." Marcus looked at Sophia with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "You don't have to." "I'd love to come," Sophia said quickly, surprised by how much she meant it. "If you're sure it's okay." "It's more than okay," Marcus said, his smile warm enough to make Sophia's pulse quicken. "Fair warning, though. You'll probably be the most overdressed person in the elementary school auditorium." That evening, as Sophia sat in her penthouse apartment looking out at the city lights, she found herself thinking about Emma's school play instead of the quarterly reports spread across her dining table. Her assistant had called 3 times to discuss the upcoming board meeting, but Sophia had let each call go to voicemail. She walked to her closet and stood looking at the rows of expensive suits and designer dresses that made up her professional wardrobe. What did someone wear to an elementary school play? She had clothing that cost more than some people made in a month, but nothing that seemed appropriate for sitting in a small auditorium watching 8-year-olds pretend to be flowers. For the first time in her adult life, Sophia wished she owned something normal. Something that wouldn't make her stand out, wouldn't make other parents wonder who she was and why she was there. She wanted to blend in, to be just another person in the audience supporting Emma. The realization hit her suddenly. She was falling. For them. Not just Marcus, though she was increasingly aware of the way her heart sped up when he smiled at her. She was falling for the whole life they represented. The simplicity, the genuine connections. The way Emma's excitement about being a sunflower could be the most important thing in the room. But she was also Sophia Chen, CEO of Technova Solutions, worth $3 billion according to the last Forbes estimate. She had board meetings and international contracts in a company that employed over 15,000 people. She couldn't just disappear into someone else's life, no matter how appealing it seemed. Could she? Sophia poured herself a glass of wine and settled onto her designer couch, still thinking about Marcus's knowing look and Emma's innocent invitation. Tomorrow she would have to make a decision about how much more of herself she was willing to reveal, and how much of her real life she was willing to risk for the chance at something that felt more authentic than anything she'd experienced in years. The quarterly reports could wait. For once, she had something more important to think about. The elementary school auditorium was exactly as Sophia had imagined. Small, slightly shabby, filled with folding chairs that had seen better days and parents holding flowers and cameras. Sophia had agonized over her outfit, finally settling on dark jeans and a simple sweater that had cost more than she cared to admit, but at least looked relatively normal. She spotted Marcus immediately, his height making him easy to find in the crowd. He was saving seats in the third row, and Mrs. Rodriguez was already there with a bouquet of sunflowers that made Sophia smile. As she made her way toward them, she noticed several other parents glancing at her curiously, and she realized that, even in her most casual clothes, she probably still looked out of place in this working-class school. "You made it," Marcus said, standing to greet her, and the warmth in his voice made her glad she'd come despite her nerves. "I wouldn't have missed it," Sophia replied, settling into the seat he'd saved beside him. "Emma's been texting me pictures of her costume all week." "Texting?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know Emma had your number." Sophia felt heat creep up her neck. She'd given Emma her personal cell phone number, something she almost never did, even for business contacts. "She wanted to make sure I knew what time the play started," she said lamely. Mrs. Rodriguez leaned over with a knowing smile. "That girl has been talking about nothing but this play and making sure Sophia would be here to see it. You'd think she was performing on Broadway." As the lights dimmed and the children began filing onto the makeshift stage, Sophia found herself genuinely excited to see Emma's performance. The little girl had transformed into an adorable sunflower, complete with a yellow hat that looked handmade and a bright smile that could be seen from the back row. The play was exactly what Sophia expected from an elementary school production. Slightly chaotic, completely charming, and full of children who forgot their lines or waved enthusiastically at their parents in the audience. Emma was a natural performer, delivering her few lines with confidence and swaying dramatically during the garden song. "She's amazing," Sophia whispered to Marcus, who was beaming with paternal pride. "She gets that from her mother," Marcus replied quietly. "Sarah was always the center of attention wherever she went. Emma has that same spark." It was the first time Marcus had mentioned Emma's mother by name, and Sophia felt the weight of being trusted with that information. She wanted to ask more, but the play was reaching its climax as all the flowers joined together for the final song about growing toward the sun. After the performance, Emma bounded off the stage and straight into Marcus's arms, still wearing her sunflower costume. "Did you see me? Did I do good? Sophia, did you like my costume?" "You were absolutely perfect," Sophia said, kneeling down to Emma's level. "The best sunflower I've ever seen." Emma threw her arms around Sophia's neck in an impulsive hug that caught her completely off guard. For a moment, Sophia froze, unused to such spontaneous affection. Then she found herself hugging back, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo and stage makeup. "Can we all go get ice cream to celebrate?" Emma asked, pulling back with hopeful eyes. "Please? I know the perfect place." Marcus looked at Sophia apologetically. "Emma, Sophia probably has other plans." "Actually, ice cream sounds perfect," Sophia interrupted, surprising herself. She had a conference call scheduled with investors in Tokyo, but for once that seemed far less important than celebrating with an 8-year-old sunflower. The ice cream parlor Emma chose was a local institution, the kind of place with sticky tables and mismatched chairs that served enormous sundaes with names like The Volcano and Cookie Monster's Dream. Sophia found herself in the strange position of being the most overdressed person in an ice cream shop, but Emma's enthusiasm was infectious enough that she stopped caring. "This is my favorite place in the whole world," Emma announced, attacking a sundae that was nearly as big as her head. "Daddy brings me here whenever I do something really good, like when I got an A on my spelling test or when I helped Mrs. Rodriguez carry her groceries upstairs." Sophia watched Marcus watching his daughter, noting the way his face softened whenever Emma spoke, the way he automatically reached over to wipe chocolate sauce from her chin. There was something beautiful about such uncomplicated devotion, and Sophia found herself wondering what it would feel like to be loved like that, completely, protectively, without condition. "So what do you really do for work?" Marcus asked suddenly, his question casual but his eyes serious. "And please don't say software development again." Sophia nearly choked on her ice cream. "What makes you think—" "Sophia," Marcus said gently, "I may not be college educated, but I'm not blind. Your clothes cost more than I make in a month, you drive a motorcycle that belongs in a museum, and every time your phone rings you handle whatever crisis is happening like someone who's used to being in charge of everything. Plus," Emma showed me how to Google people last week, and there are about 6 Sophia Chens in tech in this city. Want to guess which one has a net worth that starts with a B? Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. The ice cream shop suddenly seemed too small, too bright, too public for this conversation. "Marcus, I can explain." "You don't owe me an explanation," Marcus said quietly, glancing at Emma, who was too focused on her sundae to pay attention to the adult conversation. "But I do need to understand what's happening here. Are you slumming it with the working class? Is this some kind of social experiment?" The hurt in his voice made Sophia's chest tight. "No," she said quickly. "It's nothing like that. I swear to you it's not." "Then what is it?" Marcus asked. "Because I need to know before this goes any further. Emma's already attached to you, and if you're just playing around—" "I'm not playing around," Sophia said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "Marcus, these past few weeks have been the most real I've felt in years. When I'm with you, and Emma, I'm not a CEO or a billionaire or any of those things. I'm just me. The person I was before all the money and success and pressure." Marcus studied her face for a long moment. "Sophia Chen of Technova Solutions," he said finally. "I looked you up after Emma fell asleep last night. Forbes says you're worth $3 billion. Sophia winced. "The Forbes estimate is actually low," she said honestly. "But Marcus, that number doesn't mean anything when I'm sitting here with you. It doesn't change how I feel when Emma hugs me or how much I've enjoyed working on my father's car with you." "It changes everything," Marcus said, but his voice was sad rather than angry. "Sophia, I work with my hands. I worry about making rent and saving for Emma's college fund. You probably spend more on lunch than I make in a week. How is that supposed to work?" Before Sophia could answer, Emma looked up from her sundae with chocolate sauce on her nose. "Are you guys fighting? You look sad." "We're not fighting, sweetheart," Marcus said quickly, his voice automatically softening for his daughter. "We're just talking about grown-up stuff." Emma considered this seriously, then turned to Sophia. "Are you really rich like that lady on TV, the one Mrs. Patterson showed us?" Sophia felt trapped between honesty and the desire to protect whatever they'd built together. "Yes," she said finally. "I am." "Cool," Emma said with 8-year-old pragmatism. "Does that mean you have a big house, Can I see it sometime? The innocence of the question made Sophia's throat tight. To Emma, Sophia's wealth was just another interesting fact, like her knowing about vintage cars or being good at organizing tools. But she could see in Marcus's eyes that for him, it was a chasm he didn't know how to cross. Emma, finish your ice cream, Marcus said gently. We should get going soon. The ride back to the garage was quiet. Emma chattering happily in the back seat of Marcus's truck while the two adults remained lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Mrs. Rodriguez took Emma inside for her bath, leaving Sophia and Marcus alone in the parking area. I should have told you sooner, Sophia said finally. I wanted to, but I didn't know how. Every time I tried to bring it up, it seemed like it would ruin everything we'd built. Maybe it has ruined it, Marcus said, but he didn't sound angry anymore, just tired. Sophia, I don't know how to date someone who owns private jets and appears on magazine covers. I don't know how to introduce you to my friends or take you places or any of it. You don't have to do any of that, Sophia said desperately. We can keep things just like they are. I don't need fancy restaurants or expensive trips, I just need this. You and Emma and fixing cars and eating pizza with Mrs. Rodriguez, that's all I want. Marcus looked at her with something that might have been pity. But it's not all you are, is it? You have responsibilities, a company to run, people depending on you. How long before you get bored with playing house with the mechanic and his kid? The question hit Sophia harder than she'd expected, because part of her was afraid he might be right. Could she really walk away from everything she'd built? Could she give up the power and influence and success that had defined her adult life for something as simple and uncertain as love? I don't know, she admitted quietly. But I know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. And I know that Emma makes me want to be a better person than I've ever been. Doesn't that count for something? Marcus was quiet for so long that Sophia began to think he wasn't going to answer. Finally, he looked at her with eyes full of pain and possibility. Yeah, he said softly. It counts for everything. But Sophia, if we're going to try this, I need you to be sure, really sure. Because Emma's already in love with you. And if you decide this isn't what you want after all, it won't just be me getting hurt. Sophia felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. Emma's trust, Marcus's guarded hope, her own desperate desire for something real. It all hung in the balance of whatever she said next. I'm sure, she said, and meant it more than she'd ever meant anything in her life. I'm scared and I don't know how we'll make it work, but I'm sure about wanting to try. Marcus studied her face in the dim light from the garage, searching for something he seemed to find. Okay, he said finally, but we take this slow. And Sophia? No more lies, even little ones. If this is going to work, it has to be built on truth. Sophia nodded, feeling simultaneously relieved and terrified. She'd spent her entire adult life controlling outcomes and managing risks, but this, whatever this was becoming, felt completely beyond her ability to manage. For the first time in years, she was going to have to trust that some things were worth the risk of losing everything else. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the garage watching Marcus put the finishing touches on her father's Porsche, now fully restored to its original glory. The morning sun streaming through the open bay doors caught the silver paint job, making the car gleam like new. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, working on her homework while keeping up a steady stream of commentary about her day at school. The past months had been the most challenging and rewarding of Sophia's life. True to his word, Marcus had insisted they take things slowly, getting to know each other without the pressure of defining what they were building together. Sophia had gradually begun integrating her two worlds, starting small and working her way up to bigger revelations. Thor. First test had come when she'd invited Marcus and Emma to her penthouse for dinner. Emma's wide-eyed wonder at the floor-to-ceiling windows and city views had been endearing, but Marcus had been clearly uncomfortable in such opulent surroundings. They'd ended up ordering pizza and eating it on the living room floor while Emma explored the apartment, declaring Sophia's walk-in closet bigger than our whole bedroom, and asking why anyone needed so many shoes. "This is beautiful, but it doesn't feel like you," Marcus had said quietly while Emma was distracted by the view from the balcony. "When I picture you, I see you in my garage with grease on your hands, not in some magazine-perfect apartment." That comment had haunted Sophia for weeks. She'd started spending more and more time at the garage and less at her corporate headquarters, delegating responsibilities to her capable team and attending board meetings via video conference from Marcus's small office. Her assistant had been initially horrified by this arrangement, but Sophia had discovered that she could run her company effectively without being physically present for every decision. The real turning point had come when Emma got sick with the flu and had to stay home from school for a week. Sophia had shown up at Marcus's apartment with soup from an expensive downtown restaurant, only to find him exhausted from staying up all night with a feverish child while trying to keep up with work. "Let me help," she'd said simply. And for the next 3 days, she'd done exactly that. She'd held Emma while she coughed, read her endless stories, and learned how to make the kind of simple comfort food that actually appealed to a sick 8-year-old. She'd also quietly arranged for a temporary mechanic to help at the garage so Marcus wouldn't lose income while caring for his daughter. It was during those quiet days, watching Sophia tend to Emma with such natural care, that Marcus's walls had finally started to come down. "You're going to be an amazing mom someday," he'd said one evening after Emma had fallen asleep in Sophia's arms. "I never thought I wanted kids," Sophia had admitted. "My life was too busy, too focused on building the company. But being with Emma, it changes everything." Now, 6 months later, they'd settled into a rhythm that somehow worked despite all the reasons it shouldn't. Sophia had moved into a smaller apartment in Marcus's neighborhood, keeping her penthouse for business purposes, but choosing to live somewhere that felt more like home. She'd started a foundation focused on providing STEM education and scholarships to working-class kids, with Emma serving as her unofficial advisor on what programs would actually be cool enough for kids to want to participate in. "All done," Marcus announced, stepping back from the Porsche with satisfaction. "She's ready for her first road trip." Sophia ran her hand along the car's smooth fender, thinking about her father and how proud he would have been to see his restoration work brought back to life. "Where should we take her?" "Can we go to the beach?" Emma asked, looking up from her math homework. "I've never ridden in a fancy car to the beach before." "The beach it is," Sophia agreed. "But first, don't you have something to finish?" Emma groaned, dramatically, but returned to her homework. In the months they'd been together, Sophia had become something like a co-parent, helping with school projects and enforcing bedtime rules with the same firmness she brought to board meetings. It had been an adjustment for all of them, but especially for Sophia, who'd had to learn that love sometimes meant saying no to things an 8-year-old really, really wanted. Marcus's phone rang, and Sophia heard him answer with his usual professional greeting. But after a moment his tone changed, becoming more formal, more cautious. "Yes, she's here," he said, glancing at Sophia with concern. "May I ask who's calling?" Sophia felt her stomach drop. Very few people had this number, and none of them should be calling Marcus's garage looking for her. Marcus held out the phone. "It's someone from your company. Says it's urgent." Sophia took the phone with a sense of dread. It was her assistant, Patricia, and she sounded panicked. "Sophia, thank God. We have a situation. The Nakamura deal is falling apart. The board is demanding an emergency meeting, and there are reporters outside the building asking about your relationship with a local mechanic. Someone leaked photos of you at Emma's school play." Sophia closed her eyes, feeling her carefully balanced world starting to tilt. "How bad is it?" "Bad. The financial press is questioning your commitment to the company, and Nakamura's people are asking if Technova is still being run by its CEO, or if you've lost focus, as they put it." Marcus was watching her face, and Sophia could see him already beginning to withdraw, his expression closing off in a way she'd hoped never to see again. "I'll be there in an hour," Sophia said into the phone, then ended the call and handed it back to Marcus. "You have to go," he said simply. It wasn't a question. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Sophia admitted. "I knew this couldn't stay separate forever." Emma, who had been pretending not to listen, looked up from her homework with worry in her eyes. "Are you in trouble, Sophia?" "Not trouble exactly," Sophia said, kneeling down beside her. "But sometimes when you're responsible for a big company, you have to make hard choices. Does this mean you won't live here anymore?" Emma's voice was small, and Sophia's heart broke at the fear she heard there. Before Sophia could answer, Marcus spoke up. "Emma, why don't you go help Mrs. Rodriguez with her groceries? Sophia and I need to talk." After Emma reluctantly left, Marcus sat down on his workbench and looked at Sophia with weary resignation. "So this is how it ends." "It doesn't have to end," Sophia said desperately. "I can handle this crisis and come back. The company will survive without me for—" "Sophia," Marcus interrupted gently. "Listen to yourself. You're talking about your life's work, the company you built from nothing, like it's some inconvenient obligation. That's not who you are." "But this is who I am too," Sophia said, gesturing around the garage. "This matters to me just as much." Marcus stood and walked to her, taking her hands in his oil-stained ones. "I know it does. And that's what makes this so hard. 6 months ago, I thought you were just some rich woman playing at being normal. But you're not playing, are you? This is real for you?" Sophia nodded, tears threatening. "But your company is real too, and thousands of people depend on you for their livelihoods. You can't just walk away from that, not even for us." "So what are you saying?" Sophia asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "I'm saying maybe we've been trying to force something. That can't work. You're Sophia Chen, Billionaire CEO. I'm Marcus Rodriguez, single dad and mechanic. Maybe that's too big a gap to bridge." Sophia felt like she was watching her life split in two, each path leading away from something she couldn't bear to lose. "Marcus, please, we can figure this out. I can restructure my responsibilities, hire more people. And what happens the next time there's a crisis? And the one after that?" Marcus asked sadly. "Sophia, I've seen what your world does to people. The stress, the pressure, the constant demands, is that the life you want Emma exposed to?" The question hit Sophia like a physical blow because she'd been asking herself the same thing. In her old life, she'd worked 18-hour days and thought nothing of flying to Tokyo for a morning meeting and London for dinner. Could she really ask an 8-year-old to understand that kind of schedule? "I love you," Sophia said quietly. "I love both of you more than I ever thought possible." "I love you," Sophia said quietly. "I love both of you more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," Marcus replied, and the pain in his voice matched her own. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sophia's phone buzzed with another urgent message, then another. She could practically feel her corporate world pulling her back with invisible chains made of obligation and responsibility. "I have to go," she said finally. "But Marcus, this conversation isn't over. Give me some time to handle this crisis and then we'll figure out how to make this work." Marcus nodded, but Sophia could see in his eyes that he'd already begun the process of letting go. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, she realized that she was about to find out whether she was strong enough to have both the life she'd built and the life she'd discovered. Or if, in the end, she'd have to choose between the woman she'd been and the woman she'd learned she could be. The Porsche sat gleaming in the garage, fully restored and ready for new adventures. Sophia only hoped that when this crisis was over, there would still be somewhere for her to come home to.